everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and tonight I just finished watching episode 2 of Loki season 2, and yeah, this episode was definitely slower paced, and it feels like we're still setting up other more important plot lines while at the very least fulfilling some things that the first episode set up, because I'm gonna be honest with you, this show just has a lot of stuff going on. Like, the season 1 ended with a lot of lingering threads, and then this first episode left us with even more threads. So while the first episode we resolved the whole thing of Loki being trapped in the past version of the TVA, that seems to have been solved, at least for now. Like, that's not a big deal. However, we still have several things going on. We have first, Ravonna Renslayer. Where is she? What is she doing? We don't know. Sylvie, where's she at? Why is she go to that McDonald's in the post-credit scene? We don't know. And we find out this episode. We find out some things. Of course, that whole future version of Loki. Who pruned him? Who was calling that phone? We don't know. And then on top of all of that, of course, it's we have this ticking clock of the more branches that are being created, the larger they grow, the more unstable the loom of time becomes, and that's gonna destroy the TVA basically, and that's the future that Loki sees, and he's trying to prevent that, right? So there are some interesting things here. However, I am a bit confused on like the motivations of certain characters and how that lines up with what they're actually doing, and we'll get into all that. But first, we start off. So as we saw last episode, and this was another thing that was set up. We have Dox, Paradox, I guess it's short for. Dox is that general lady, and she had a whole bunch of troops, and they raided the armory of the TVA, and they supposedly went looking for Sylvie, and so they left. We even heard B-15 saying, all that for Sylvie? I don't buy it, because they had a million grenades and all that. So, supposedly they went looking for Sylvie. So now that Loki has fixed his whole twitchy time skipping problem, now they're going to go look for Sylvie. And the only lead they have is that X5, who was that one hunter we met for a second. His temporal pad activated, and they managed to track it down to this very specific time in the 70s, where he is now a movie star, and he seems to have been there a while. I mean, his hair has completely grown out, and I have some questions immediately. And that's the thing about this show, is that it feels like every single time they do one thing, they make me ask 3 or 4 more questions. So first of all, everyone who works at the TVA is a variant from a branch that was pruned. Okay, so none of their lives exist anymore. Their version of time was pruned. So what we have here is X5 has gone to the main sacred timeline during the 70s, and he, I guess, is just living out the life of his original person, right? Like the original version of himself. My big question now is, where is the real version of himself, right? Did he go back to the 70s and did he prune that version of himself that way he could take over his life? I don't think they actually say what happened here, because he's just living the life of a movie star now, and I'm like, okay, but there was a version of him that was already doing this. The person we're talking to now is the one from the TVA, and apparently he's been doing this long enough that his hair has grown out, but I don't understand quite how that works. Obviously, he goes back there, and I guess he could spend years there, but it's it's the TVA. They could just show up there whenever they wanted to. So why seemingly after years, why are they just now showing up? I guess that's when his temporal pad beeped, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of confusing. I have a lot of questions already about how this works. Like I said, did he just prune, or did he just knock out that version of himself that's on the secret timeline? because he wanted to be able to live this life? I don't know. I can't tell. It's interesting. And basically we just get like a extended chase sequence with some pretty cool stuff. You know, Loki uses a lot of his magic, which, you know, it feels like we don't see him do a whole lot, right? And admittedly, a lot of the times he's in the TVA, and that's when his magic doesn't work. So I am glad that during this chase scene, where they're chasing down X5, who, you know, they're just like, hey, we got some questions for you, and then he ran. I'm glad they remember, like, yeah, Loki is definitely strong enough to catch this guy and take care of this once he has his powers, because you know, this is the guy that fought the Avengers after all, right? So like, one guy, even though he's a TVA member, like this X5 Brad Wolf character, he's just a guy, you know. He's not super in any way. Anyways, so they end up taking him back to the TVA under arrest for abandoning his post. And they notice that his temp pad is experimented on, and they're trying to understand exactly what's happening. And we spend a large portion of this episode with some pretty, you know, interesting interrogation discussions, talking about like, well, aren't you curious about your timeline, like what life you had before the TVA kidnapped you and erased your memories, and now you're just a worker bee for the TVA? And you know, that kind of got inside Mobius's head a little bit, and you know, I'm pretty sure we're gonna go to a jet ski, whatever life he had as a jet ski person. You know, and so it was a lot of good character work, a lot of good acting. The torture sequence where he's put inside this box and it gets smaller and smaller was pretty cool. But ultimately, while all this is happening, I'm like, can we get to like Ravonna Renslayer and Sylvie, and like because that is one thing, is like this episode did a great job with a lot of character stuff, but sometimes I was finding myself going like, okay, but can we get to like the big plot stuff, because there's so much happening that you got to wrap some of it up. And luckily the episode does wrap some of this up. So basically what ends up happening is they go find Sylvie eventually, and they talk to her. She's at a McDonald's, and she's talking about how like, I don't want anything to do with you, Loki. I don't want anything to do with the TVA. You know, I killed the guy who was writing everyone's future, so now everyone has free will, right? I'm done with this. But Loki's like, well, I went to the future and I saw you at the TVA, and I don't understand what was happening, but the TVA was being destroyed, and the TVA is the only thing standing as a line of defense against other kings. And this is kind of where we get into some confusing character motivations for Loki specifically, and he's our main character, so you know, I am like confused as to why he's doing what he's doing, and we'll get into that. But you know, he does talk about essentially what he told Mobius last episode about how, like, you know, I met this man, he told me his great plan about like pruning timelines to prevent variants of himself, even more evil variants. And I think he's right. He had a point. You know, I agree with what he said. You know, so Loki's very much on the pro TVA, seemingly pro pruning side, and we'll get to that in a second. But anyways, they end up finding, they end up being able to figure out where the rest of the TVA agents who left with Docs were. And they have this whole setup that very much feels like the moment where Sylvie bombed the TVA, bombed the Sacred Timeline with a bunch of explosive devices at once. We get a similar thing where all these TVA agents are going through a whole bunch of doors, and they're going to activate the bomb to purge all these branches all at the same time. And it looks like they managed to do it. Like, I don't know if they've, you know, destroyed all the branches, because I think Sylvie's with the McDonald's is still there, but they've done a decent amount of damage. I want to say they said 30% of the branches at some point, but it might have been more by the end of it. But they do prune a bunch of branches, and we get this moment with B15 or B16, B15, yeah, where she's like, oh, those were lives, those, you know, and she's kind of been on this kick since episode 1, where she's like, you know, all these timelines that we've been pruning, those were people's lives. We're mass murderers. We're, you know, we've just been killing people, which she's not wrong about. but I'm surprised there are not more people on the TVA who are like kind of coming to the same realization. It's just one character who really starts talking like this, and I'm like, there should be a bunch of characters in the TVA who just now realized that they're, you know, basically mass murdering who knows how many people every time they prune a timeline, really just because these fake puppets told them to, you know. So like conflicting things there. But then again, you could say that B-15 only cares about this because she found out that she had a life on the timeline. You know, so it's like you knew what you were doing beforehand. Like you knew that this was erasing things, but I don't know, maybe they just never thought about it in the context of it being real in a way. And so we get a lot of playing around with stuff being real this episode also. You know, we have Brad Wolf, you know, X5 here talking about how like nothing in the TVA is real. You know, we were told we were doing all this for a reason, it turned out to be a lie, but you know, only kind of, right? That's kind of the thing that Loki's on here, is that like, okay, sure, the timekeepers were fake, but the story, the multiversal war that we're stopping by branching all these, you know, pruning all these branch timelines, like that is true, that is happening. So I don't know, maybe they're not entirely without a point, I guess. I don't know, but here's my thing about all this is that well first, they managed to, you know, arrest all of Dox's people, or at least most of them, and it kind of ends on this note of like, wow, we didn't save any of the branches, or at least most of them. And then Sylvie goes back to her McDonald's branch, and that's pretty much the end of the episode. We see that she still has He Who Remains' circular pad. So I want to talk about Loki's motivations, and it's because I'm a little confused here. So in both episodes so far, he's expressed how, you know, he thinks He Who Remains was right, and how the TVA is the only defense they have against more Kang variants coming along, and this whole horrible future is like we gotta save the TVA. Because the TVA is the only reason we were able to keep the other variants of He Who Remains away. My thing is, the only reason they were able to do those is because they were pruning all these branch timelines. And so Loki kind of seems to just be on that side now. You know, Loki, like, it's weird, like he stopped these people from pruning all these timelines, but like, if you follow his reasoning about how like he thinks He Who Remains was actually right, it's like, so shouldn't you want those timelines to all be pruned? Like you should want that lady to get away. And if anything, Loki should be on her team. Loki should be like, yeah, this is exactly what we need to do. We need to start getting rid of these timelines like we were doing, because I'm trying to not let that one specific person show up, you know, another variant of Kang. So I don't quite understand, you know, why 1 minute he's saying that, you know, he's saying how, you know, we gotta stop variants of Kangs from showing up, and then the next minute he's stopping other people from branching a bunch of timelines. But like, isn't that exactly what you need to be doing? How else do you plan on stopping Kang? Does he have another plan? Like, because he doesn't seem to be overly concerned about the, you know, the millions of lives that get destroyed every time a timeline gets erased, like B-15 now does. But I don't know, I'm a little confused as to like what's driving Loki right now, because like it's to save the TVA, but like, so then you're pro pruning branches then, like that's right, because isn't that the whole point of the TVA? The only reason they work is because they do that. So I don't know, it's a little confusing. In any case, I'm still having a lot of fun with the show, and at the very least they wrapped up the plot line of, you know, what was Dox doing with all those grenades and all those people that went with her. And now we know it's that they were planning to just essentially bomb the branches of the timeline, kind of like Sylvie did to the TVA. So, you know, not a bad plan. But they've kind of wrapped that up. She's in jail now, and I guess the only thing left to do is, they still have the ticking time clock of all these branches are, I guess they've bought themselves some time now, right? Because all those branches just got pruned. So I guess, I don't, that's my other thing is like, they don't really address it like that, but like, shouldn't OB be like, hey, we pruned all those timelines, so now the strain is not on the time loom as much anymore. So we got, we're kind of okay now. But now they can't open this one computer bypass unless they have He Who Remains with them, which is probably how Victor Timely and that whole Quantumania after credit scene is going to play into all this. But yeah, I'm confused by Loki. Because, again, 1 minute he's like, oh, He Who Remains had it right. We got to stop the other King variants. They were the real threat. We do this by stopping their timelines from existing. And yet now he's also like stopping people from doing that. And it's like, I don't know. I don't quite understand that part. I don't know. Maybe I missed it. Someone explain it to me. Like, what is Loki's plan? Because he seems to care so much about the TVA existing, but the only reason that they're useful at all is because they did do the whole pruning of the timelines. If they're not doing that anymore, and Loki's fine with that, then it's like, so then what is the plan to stop any variants of King that show up? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. But in any case, we know that we're going to see at least one with Victor Timely, probably next episode. It's gonna probably help stabilize the time loom while they have, however much time they manage to buy. But anyways, yeah, I'm still really enjoying this show. It's, the character interactions are like really the highlight of the entire series. Just every time Owen Wilson and Tom Hiddleston, I don't know. Sorry, I'm really tired. Loki. Anytime they're on screen together and they're bantering and they're talking, and even this X5 guy, he was really good bantering with all the characters, getting inside their heads, the whole interrogation scene. It was all really well done, and I'm enjoying the show, but I do have just questions that, like, this is the kind of show that wants you to ask these kind of more like, wait, hold on, does that make any sense kind of questions. So I don't know. Again, if someone can explain the whole thing that Loki's doing here, where he's stopping people from pruning branches, but he's also trying to save the TVA because they're the best defense against King variants, but the way that is because they prune branches, which he's stopping them from doing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if someone can explain that better and understand, like, wait, what is Loki's goal here exactly? Because he seemed to kind of work against that goal this episode, and I don't really get it. If anything, it should be like B-15 against Loki, because she's like super, like, all those timelines, all those branches were millions and billions of people's lives, we should just let them all grow. And then Loki's like, no, we gotta stop King, and he should be trying to prune branches, and she's trying to stop him. Like, that feels like the dynamic that's supposed to be happening based on, the way that these characters behave. But we're not really seeing that. They're just still on the same side somehow. But I don't know. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about Loki episode 2. Tell me if I am missing something obvious. If like, oh, well, Loki plans on doing this with the TVA. Here's why he doesn't want to prune branches. Because otherwise I don't know what the big defense against King is supposed to be. Cause like that feels like that's all they got is to prune branches and stop him or not. So, I don't know. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about Loki Season 2. Let me know your theories. Let me know what you think Kang's gonna end up doing in this, or the, not Kang the Conqueror, but Victor Timely. There it is. Victor Timely. Let me know what you think he's gonna be doing in all this, what his role is to play. Is this the one that becomes He Who Remains? And that's the other thing, is that like we're dealing with a version of Kang, I guess, that has not done all the horrible things. So maybe they'll be able to recruit him for help instead of him being the main bad guy. and it all just depends on when you come in contact with them. And, you know, anyways, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye.